Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back once again to our ongoing series on the glories of our beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So today we're continuing with our series on the Samadhis of our Acaryas, and this will be part 9. And this week I would like to speak about Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Something about his life and his teachings and the final rites that were performed as he was placed in Samadhi after his departure. And we'll finish, of course, with the Tsuchaka poem that Vaishnavas sing annually on the day of his departure, each year. So, Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami appeared in Sri Rangam, South India, that holy place, as the son of Venkata Bhatta, who was a Sri Vaishnava Brahmana, meaning he was a follower of the Sri Sampradaya, a follower of Ramanujacharya. And as many of you know, Lord Chaitanya once stayed in the house of Venkat Bhatta for 4 months when Gopal Bhatta, he wasn't a Goswami at that time, but Gopal Bhatta was a young boy, actually. And Lord Chaitanya converted the entire family to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Because Gopal Bhatta was just a boy at this time, he was able to personally serve Lord Chaitanya, who we read in Shastras treated Gopal Bhatta very affectionately, even one time giving the young boy remnants of prasad from his own plates. Mahaprabhu gave his prasadam to the young boy. You can just imagine. And then later, in his late teens, Gopal Bhatta went to Vrindavan, where, amongst many other things, he became a very dear friend of Sri Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis. We're summarizing here. One day he had a dream in which Lord Chaitanya appeared to him and said, go to the Kali Gandaki river and find Sri Hari, which means the Shalagram Sheila form of the Lord. So on the order of Mahaprabhu, Gopal Bhatta Goswami underwent the arduous journey of traveling to the Kali Gandaki River in Nepal, where he found, as we know, 12 Shalagram Sheilas in that sacred river. And back in Vrindavan, one of those Sheilas, actually a Damodar Sheila, later manifested himself as the most beautiful deity of Radharaman. Radharaman. Everyone knows that pastime. I was reading, however, that after Radharaman appeared, many incredible loving exchanges took place between Gopal Bhatta and his now worshipable deity Radharaman. Actually, it's described in Bhakti Ratnakara 4.334 that once Radharaman called Gopal Bhatta and revealed himself as Gopal, tending cows and surrounded by cowherd boys. It's right there in Bhakti Ratnakara. And in Bhakti Ratnakara 4.335 to 348, it describes that on another occasion, Gopal Bhatta was feeling very intense separation from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so Radharaman manifested himself as Lord Chaitanya in the freshness of youth. He was dressed as a Brahmana boy. And for a moment, I was reading, Gopal Bhatta just stood and stared at this very enchanting form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then, overcome with bliss, he called out, "What have I seen? What have I seen?" And he fell to the ground unconscious. So the Bhakti Ratnakara also makes a very profound statement about the relationship between Gopal Bhatta and Radharaman. This is Bhakti Ratnakara 4.349. There it's written, Radharaman would at once satisfy whatever desire found a place in the heart of Gopal Bhatta. Bhakti Ratnakara. Radharaman would at once satisfy whatever desire found a place in the heart of Gopal Bhatta. Such an intimate relationship he had with the deity. So such is the bond between the Lord and his devotee. Just like Prabhupada said one time when he was installing the Chota Radha Krishna, the small Radha Krishna, very early in the movement in Los Angeles. After installing the deity, he gave a lecture, and he said in the lecture that if you worship this deity, or these deities of Radha and Krishna, according to all the proper rules and regulations that I've given you, he said, one day these deities will speak to you. Prabhupada said that. One day these deities will speak to you. So historically, Radharaman manifested in the year 1542. And that worship is still, to this day, so perfect and so complete that Srila Prabhupada once said that we as members of ISKCON, we should inquire and study the worship of Radharaman in order to learn deity worship. We can go to the Radharaman temple and inquire from the pujaris, observe the worship, and in this way we can learn how to do deity worship. He gave that instruction actually. Now in collaboration with Srila Sanatana Goswami, Gopal Bhatta Goswami also compiled the famous Hari Bhakti Vilas, a book explaining the rituals and devotional practices within our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. We've discussed many of these things in a previous class, a more complete class about his life, last year I think. He also wrote Satkariya Deepika, and he also wrote the outline for Jiva Goswami's Sadsandarbhas. Now in time, Lord Chaitanya and a number of associates began to depart this world, and after the disappearance of Sri Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami, as well as Gopal Bhatta's uncle, you could say his instructing spiritual master, Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati, Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami was just devastated. Just devastated. It is said he used to pray to Radharaman to please take him back to the spiritual world, where he can meet the divine couple along with his beloved Rupa and Sanatana Goswamis. We've discussed this, how deep is the separation when these different personalities leave the world in the hearts of advanced devotees. It's incomprehensible. So therefore, as all these as Mahaprabhu and all these great devotees began to depart, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, in preparation for his future departure from this world, he began training up one of his disciples. That disciple's name was Gopinath Pandit. He was a brahmachari from birth, and very sweet devotee, very dedicated to Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So he was trained up in the worship of Radharaman. And Gopal Bhatta Goswami also trained Gopinath's brother. His name was Damodar, and he was a householder in the worship as well. So two brothers, one's a brahmachari, one's a householder. They worked together to worship Radharaman. Then, finally, on the day of Shravan Shukla Panchami, it's the bright fifth day of the month of, on the bright day of the fifth month of Shravan, in the year 1578, Gopal Bhatta Goswami departed this world to go back home to Goloka Vrindavan. He was actually 75 years old at the time. And on that day, Gopal Bhatta Goswami was placed in Samadhi near to a tree where Radharaman had appeared from the Shalagram Sheila. The Shalagram Sheila was being worshipped, among other Sheilas, near to a tree there in Sri Vrindavan Dham. So they placed Gopal Bhatta Goswami in Samadhi next to that tree, actually. And a well-known Vaishnava poet wrote about this disappearance of Srila Gopal Bhatta Goswami. It's a famous passage. He wrote, on the bright fortnight of the month of Shravana, with rain in the clouds, the Sakis played mridangas loudly. With that sound of the mridanga, Dio, Dio, Gunamanjari, meaning Gopal Bhatta Goswami's identity in the spiritual world, he entered into the eternal pastimes of Sri Radharaman. It's interesting, he describes it, with rain in the clouds, the Sakis were playing mridangas loudly. And with the sound of that mridanga, Dio, Dio, Gunamanjari, meaning Gopal Bhatta Goswami, entered into the eternal pastimes of Sri Radharaman in the spiritual world. So since then, every year, the followers of Gopal Bhatta Goswami hold a festival in his honor in the Radharaman temple. It's called the Dio Dio Utsava Festival. That's where they got the name. Dio Dio, like the drum sounding. The Sakis are playing, and there's drum sounds. So Dio Dio Utsava Festival, a special name of his Disappearance Day festival, Dio Dio Utsava Festival. And on that occasion, the Radharaman Goswamis, they actually organize a 3-day non-stop festival. It's not just one day. For many of our Acaryas, their Disappearance Day is celebrated one day. But for Gopal Bhatta Goswami, it's the observance is a 3-day festival. And this has been held without stop for all these centuries, since 500 years ago. And the sequence of events for that festival are very interesting. And I'll share them with you. That on the day before his disappearance day, all the Goswamis come together at the temple and they sing the Adivas Kirtan during the night. It's the first Kirtan sung. Adivas means like an auspicious Kirtan before and a big event begins. So on the day before his disappearance, Goswamis come together and they do an Adivas Kirtan, actually during the nighttime. And the next morning, on the day marking the disappearance of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, all the Goswamis, because there's many Goswami families who are worshipping in Radharaman temple, they come from their homes with Mahaprasadam that they've been given from Radharaman, from the temple at Radharaman, and they offer that Mahaprasad to Gopal Bhatta Goswami in a special ceremony. And on that day, Radharaman, he actually sits on a sacred sanctum of gold and a gold and silver throne outside of the altar he usually sits in. As you know, sometimes we go to Radharaman temple and he's not inside the temple area there, but he's just outside on a platform before the devotees, so devotees can come and see him more closely. So on that day, Radharaman comes out of the little temple room where he's in, a little bit forward, and he's on a gold and silver throne. Very beautiful, massive gold and silver throne to celebrate that day of celebration. So later many kuliyas, it's a special type of thick kheer sweet milk, are offered to Radharaman and then distributed to the devotees. This actually goes on every day in Radharaman temple. If you go there, those little clay pots, that's a thick kheer, sweet milk. It's called kaliyas. So on that day also, it's distributed in mass to everyone who comes to observe that day. And then later in the morning, all the Goswamis, they gather to discuss the pastimes of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and then in the evening, the wives and daughters of those Goswamis, they meet in the temple for the same purpose. In the morning, the men meet, they talk about Gopal Bhatta Goswami, they sing his glories. In the evening, the wives and daughters of the Goswamis, they come to the same place for the same purpose. It's interesting, isn't it? At midday, after worship at the Samadhi, everyone sits together and sings the Tsuchaka Kirtan, composed for Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And then the third day, so the celebrations continue the next day, on the third day, where devotees have a 24-hour kirtan in the Samadhi itself. And afterwards, a large feast is distributed. So on the third day, everyone comes together, and in the temple, and there's a 24-hour kirtan. 24-hour kirtan in the samadhi. And afterwards, massive feast is distributed to all who were there and all who come afterwards as well. And I noted on one of my many visits to the Samadhi Mandir of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, which is just next to the temple, there are many small samadhis inside his Samadhi Mandir. They're like about this big, little samadhis this big, of various Acaryas and Goswamis who had served in that family, serving Gopal Bhatta Goswami and serving Radharaman. They have these little shrines where their ashes are. And they're present as like little dome-like structures around and throughout the Samadhi Mandir of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. And therefore, when pilgrims visit the Samadhi of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, they do 3 parikramas around his Samadhi, which include the Samadhis of all the previous saints as well. So I would like to end today's lecture with the Tsuchaka Kirtan of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. It was written by a Bengali poet in the disciplic succession of the Radharaman Goswamis. He wrote very beautifully as follows, and of course I'll just give the English translation, but you can listen carefully, and in this way we can absorb ourselves in this great personality of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. He wrote, "Whenever I see the beautiful lotus feet of Sri Gopal Bhatta Prabhu, my eyes flood with tears." He called him Prabhu because that's also a very affectionate way to address someone. So he said, whenever I see the beautiful lotus feet of Sri Gopal Bhatta Prabhu, my eyes flood with tears. One becomes free from the cycle of birth and death by hearing about your, Gopal Bhatta Goswami's, unlimited qualities. Being attracted by your moon-like face and lips, which radiate like the rising of the sun, I can't be pierced by Cupid's 10 golden arrows. Your beautiful teeth resemble a string of pearls. Your joyful words are saturated with sweet nectar. The Goswamis, Shirup and Sanatan Goswamis, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Raghava Pandit, Shri Krishnadas Kaviraj, Lokanath Goswamis, all of them are your life and soul. And your deepest soul is your worship of Radharamanji. With your body full of love, you offer obeisances to Lord Chaitanya, and like a honeybee, you're very attached to his lotus feet. You also kindly gave shelter to Srinivasacharya. He actually initiated Srinivasacharya, Gopal Bhatta Goswami. Your only engagement is associating with pure devotees, relishing rasa, and tasting the divine madness of Gopi Bhav. The pastimes of Radharaman flow through your mind like the celestial Ganges. You are the crest jewel of Rasik Vaishnavas. Relishing Prem Rasa, you become overwhelmed very often with ecstatic emotions. O ocean of spontaneous love for Radharamanji, you are the friend of the fallen, and your fame is sung throughout the universe. O your form is most sweet and full of mercy, and your unlimited qualities are just like a touchstone. Just once, O Master, let me see your lotus feet, the essence of all sweetness. After many, many births, I have attained the rare fortune of serving the servants of your eternal associates. Because of bad karma, I have wasted my life enjoying sense gratification. I am full of offenses, but my only hope is that you, being full of merciful qualities, will finally deliver this fallen soul. Although my mind is fickle and I'm greedy and sinful, still this Manohar Das, this is the author, still this Manohar Das calls out to you, please, please, don't neglect me. Hare Krishna. Such nectar. Yes, so Braj, Vrindavan, and all the eternal residents of Sri Vrindavan Dham, we can only pray over and over that Srila Prabhupada will grant us eternal residence in the divine abode of Sri Vrindavan. So thank you, Prabhu. We'll be back next week, next Friday, with a discussion on another one of our great Acaryas. So I'll look forward to seeing you at that time. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, the revealer of the Dham. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Shrimati Radharani ki, Mayapur Dham ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Krishna Sankirtan Yagya ki, Goloka Vrindavan Dham ki, Nitai Gaur Pimanandi, Jai Jai Sri Sri Radhe